how do we prepare for the course, right? So without any further delay, I'll come to the structure. So when we come to the structure of this exam, I'll first talk about papers 1 and 2, right? So that means the regular testing as we used to know it earlier, which is to be held on 17th of May. Again, AP statistics initially was supposed to be happening on 13th of May, which has been delayed to 17th May due to a festival that is on the 13th of May. That's why. So we have two administrations again. All of the administrations, that means the late testing and the regular testing, are supposed to be paper based. The digital testing is the third testing. So coming to the first two, the structure is simple. There are two sections. The multiple choice section would have about 40 questions, 1.5 hours given to this section, and then 50% of the exam score would be dependent on this one. Section 2 would be free response questions, 6 questions, 5+1 as we put it. So when we are saying 5+1, we're essentially saying that one of them is going to be an investigative question. So investigatives take more time as compared to the regular questions, right? So we'll have 25 minutes given to one particular investigative question, and the rest 65 minutes would be distributed equally amongst the other 5 free responses. When it comes to the marking system, the multiple choices do not have any negatives. That means whenever we're attempting an exam, we should always look at eliminating options in case we're doubtful about a few questions, but make sure that we answer all these questions. In section 2, again, the free responses are scaled on a scale of 0 to 4, 4 being essentially correct. So whenever the free response questions get evaluated, we always evaluate them on a scale of 0 to 4. So 4 means essentially correct. That means if there were 3 parts of the question, you've answered all the 3 parts correctly, you've mentioned all the relevant points. And in case you fail to mention a few relevant points, for example, if you're attempting a question on scatter plots and you do not uh, write the direction or the pattern of the scatter plot, you're likely to lose 1 point, and then your answer becomes a partially correct answer instead of an essentially correct answer. And further, these scores are then scaled such that out of 100%, roughly a 75% of the test leads to a 5 on the AP statistics. When it comes to a structure of digital exam, which is the administration 3, we would realize there are two sections again. The first section does not have any change, so this is pretty much similar to the admin 1 and admin 2. 40 questions, 1.5 hours, 50% of the exam score dependent on this. In the section 2, we'll have multiple choice questions and free response questions both this time. So there are going to be 11 multiple choice questions and 4 free responses. So if you see, like in the admin 1 and admin 2, you always have 6 free responses, which have been cut down to a 4 free responses. Last year, when the paper went digital, so because of the COVID considerations, when the paper went digital, you were allowed to write handwritten answers and send the pictures. This time, this is not going to happen. So this time, they'll launch a digital app, which we expect to come somewhere in the early April, wherein students can type their responses. So you'll get all the symbols on the keyboard, which you can use in order to write the answers. But essentially, the answers cannot be handwritten this time. Moving further to the syllabus, so essentially the AP statistics syllabus has 9 units, so to say. I'll be talking about each of the unit one by one. Let's come to the first unit. This unit is about exploring one variable data. So essentially the first unit is very much similar to what you've been learning in the school statistics. This comprises about 15 to 23%. So if you see, a good chunk of the exam is dedicated to some of the part that you've already studied maybe in your school exams, right? Talking about the univariate data, so the mean, median, mode, the center of the data, the standard deviations, accompanied by a few graphical plots, so to say histograms, stem and leaf plots, dot plots, box plots. If you see, the questions here are somewhat this way. They give you a data and they always ask you to describe the data. So a typical question in the AP statistics, especially the free response, would be this way: write a few sentences or describe. So they never really tell you what is to be described specifically. So they hardly ever tell you that describe the center or describe the spread. They always tell you a generic statement to describe. So I always tell my students to remember an acronym which is SOCS or SOCS. So SOCS means shape. That means you should always describe the shape of the data. So depending on the shape of the data, we'll have a right skewed data with us, we'll have a symmetric data or the normal distribution as we know it, or a left skewed data. So I should be able to code the shape of the data. The shape of the data would tell me how the frequencies have been distributed. O stands for outlier. So if there are any anomalies in your data set, you're supposed to code them as well. Then comes C, which is the center of the data. So where exactly is the data clustered, you'll have to tell them, or what is the most representative point of the data set you're supposed to tell them. When it comes to S again, that's the spread of the data. So how spread out your data is, or what is the range of the values that you have. So these are the 4 key points that I have to keep in mind when I'm attempting a free response question. When it comes to a multiple choice, again, you'll be given the data, but this time you'll be asked a specific question. So let's say the variance or the mean in general. Again, if you see here also, repeating myself, the graphing calculator becomes an indispensable tool. Because if I have to calculate the mean median mode manually, that is going to take a lot of time. So ideally a free response, which is not an investigative question, takes 13 minutes. So I believe that somebody who's practiced the graphing calculators enough would be able to answer, like get the numerical values in, let's say 30 seconds or 50 seconds. And then you are supposed to invest all the 12 minutes to describing this data. So that is exactly where you're allotted the points, when you describe the numbers or you make sense out of those numbers. When it comes to the second unit, so the second unit is exploring 2 variable data. So again, regression analysis is a very popular tool that we use in statistics. So unit 2 talks about the regression analysis. 5 to 7% of the syllabus is dedicated to this. A typical question here would consist of a scatter plot. So you might be asked to interpret a scatter plot. So I always, again, tell my students to remember a few acronyms like DUFS. So DUFS generally means direction. I should always be able to code the direction where the scatter plot is going. So if I realize here the points are in a positive pattern. U as in any unusual features, so any outliers or influential points, so to say. F means the form of the data. That means, is it linearly associated? Is it a non-linear? And S stands for the strength of the data again. So strength as in how fairly or how strongly are the points related to each other. So scatter plots is one very common topic coming out here. The second is always the regression output table. So if you're studying AP statistics, you should be used to this regression output table. The kind of questions that can be asked are to form the LSRL, that means the least square regression line, using the regression output table. The other thing that is quite common here is the R squares. So to know the coefficient of determinations, to know the coefficient of correlations. So this is precisely how a free response question would look. When it comes to a multiple choice, again, using the same regression outputs or the same scatter plots, you may be asked some direct questions here. When it comes to the calculator, again, the calculator has a role to play here, but more or less, most of the things here would be dealt with the regression output table. So this happens to be the star concept of the chapter. Going ahead, the unit 3 here is about collecting data. So I believe this is one of the simplest chapters in AP statistics that we have. This talks about sample surveys. This talks about experiments. In general, how do you collect the data efficiently? So here, be it the free responses or be it the multiple choices, we can expect them to be on a simpler scale. So for example, here they would just ask you to design an experiment. So the completely randomized designs, randomized block designs. If you know a few confounding factors, you can always keep them. If you think there are no confounding factors, you can always eliminate them. So you can go with a completely randomized design. When it comes to sample survey also, you need to know 4 prime surveys. Those are simple randoms, stratified, systematic, and cluster. When we go ahead, we have chapter 4, which is probability. So probability, I feel, is one of the topics that students really have a confusion about. But in general, probability is also going to serve a basis to AP statistics. So sure, as a prerequisite of probability, I would always suggest a student to know a few counting principles. So counting principles as in the permutations, combinations, uh, the concepts that you use in counting the favorable outcomes or the sample spaces in general. Again, going ahead, I would be using conditional probabilities quite a lot in this chapter, Bayes theorem quite a lot in this chapter, tree diagrams quite a lot in this chapter. Random variables again would serve as a basis for further chapters which are going to be inferential statistics. So when we come to random variables, there are three random variables that we'll study here: the binomial random variables, the geometric random variables, and the normal random variables. So essentially, binomial and normal are again the star topics or the key topics here, because normal distribution, as you would see, would serve a basis for the entire inference that you're going to study in the course further. Binomial is also something which we use quite fairly in statistics. So these two distributions are quite important when it comes to the preparations. Again, when it comes to multiple choice questions, we'll expect direct questions to come up. So a calculator can be very helpful here because the calculators have inbuilt tools in order to get your probabilities. But when it comes to multiple choice questions, I'm sorry, the free response questions, like you see here, they would just give you a case study and they would ask you the probability distribution or the probabilities here. Sure, I would expect that on the free response, the rubric would allocate at least 1 point on the assumptions or the conditions. So this is a part where the students lack quite a lot. For example, when we come to a binomial distribution, we should understand that a binomial distribution can only come into existence when the observations are all independent. So if you see here, they say that passengers are all independent of each other. That means the request that they're making is supposed to be independent. Second, the probability that they look for an international flight or a domestic flight is again constant throughout the process. So this way, there are a few conditions that you'll have to ensure in order to use a binomial probability. So when we're preparing for a free response question of probability, we need to ensure that we give a well justification about which probability distribution are we going to use. Going ahead, the next chapter, which is going to be sampling distribution. So like I said, from probability, the transition happens from a descriptive statistics to inferential statistics. We're now going to infer things about the population. When we infer things about population, we need to know the sampling distributions very precisely. The sampling distributions that we are going to read here in AP statistics are going for mean, again, single samples, as well as two populations. So I should know the general properties of the sampling distributions. So they follow a normal distribution and under what circumstances, what is the mean of the sampling distribution, what happens to be the standard deviations. Second, I want to know about the proportions in general. So again, the same idea, single versus two populations. So again, when does a sampling distribution of proportion happens to be normal? What are the assumptions? And what are the properties of the sampling distribution? I should know them fairly. Going ahead, the next chapter here is going to be inference for categorical data. So precisely from chapter 6 till chapter 9 comes a major chunk of the exam. Sure, we're going to read about the inferential processes. So when it comes to proportions, let's say if I want to study the prevalence of an attribute. So for example, the proportion of people who write AP statistics this year. How am I going to infer this? I'm going to infer this based on the sample. So I'll use the sample proportions in order to estimate things. Two things that are very important here are the confidence intervals. And the second thing that comes here is the hypothesis testing. Again, single sample as well as two populations. So when I'm considering confidence intervals, a lot of students ask me this, that do we need to remember the formulas? I say yes, absolutely. That is because somewhere in the multiple choice questions, you would realize that they do not ask you just the lower and the upper bounds of confidence intervals. They ask you the general structure of the confidence interval. That means I should know what the general structure looks like. The general structure of the confidence interval is also provided in the formula sheets in the beginning of the exam. But of course, this is something that they can test in the multiple choice. Also, in the free response questions, the basic structure of confidence interval somewhere has 1 point on the rubric. So you need to know that how a confidence interval has been structured. Secondly, the margin of errors should be known to me. How are the margin of errors formed? The second thing is hypothesis testing. Again, sure, one thing that I have to focus is on the test statistics. How are the test statistics formed in general? The general formulas of the test statistics are very important. Going ahead, inference for quantitative data, the means. So whatever we have done with the proportion, the same sort of a thing can be done on a quantitative data where I have averages to deal with. So if that is the case, I would be using the means. Sure, the primary concept or the concept that they test quite often is the understanding of t-tests and the z-tests. So a student should realize whether a t-test has to be used or a t-interval has to be used or a z-interval has to be used. In these chapters, I always advise my students to make a few mind maps. What are those mind maps? One of the mind maps that we should always have with us is based on the conditions. What are the conditions that I'm going to test? For example, when it comes to means, if I'm testing a confidence interval or if I'm building a confidence interval, I need to assure a couple of things. One, that the sample which has been given to me is random. Second, the normality assumption has been satisfied, so I can use a z-score or a t-score. Third, if the population standard deviation has not been given, I use a t-test. So all of these assumptions or conditions have to be checked one by one if you're attempting a free response. If you're attempting a multiple choice, again, the structure of confidence interval and the test statistics should be known to me. Of course, you can perform all the confidence intervals and t-tests and z-tests in the calculator, but a basic structure, a basic understanding of the structure is always welcomed in the APs. The next is chi-square distribution. So again, we tested proportions somewhere in chapter 6, but we're testing the proportions again here. This time, the only difference is we test multiple proportions. So there are 3 types of chi-squares that I'll be using. One is the goodness of fit, how well a distribution fits a data. Second, homogeneity of proportions. And third is independence of attributes. So for example, sure, if you see they're linking father's education to son's education, they want to establish whether there is a dependence or not. So sure, I would use a chi-square test, a two-way chi-square test. Now, again, in the chi-square, there is only one test statistic that I have to know, and there are no confidence intervals. So a student can be relaxed about this. There are absolutely no confidence intervals tested here. The only thing that you have to do in a hypothesis in a chi-square is a hypothesis test. The degrees of freedom should be known to me. So basically, like sometimes they only ask you questions based on the degrees of freedom and the chi-square tables. So in order to pull out the critical values from a chi-square table, I should know them using a calculator as well as a chi-square table that has been given to me in the question papers. When it comes to inference for slopes, so this is again a very small chapter, again not having too much weightage overall, but again this is by far the easiest thing I know. So the confidence intervals, sure, and the t-test for slope, both of the things I should know. I should know them in context to the regression output. So again, all these years I have never seen a question that gives you a data and asks you to get the t-tests or get the confidence intervals based on the data. They generally give you a table output and they ask you what are the confidence intervals associated, what are the hypothesis tests associated. Sometimes the question is only on the basis of degrees of freedom. So again, degree of freedom becomes a very important thing too. I can get a question where they only ask me what is the degree of freedom associated with a given data set. So this is about the slopes. Sure, I would say that the calculator only plays a role in getting the critical values or the t values as we call them. Assumptions sure would not be that important, but again the students can know a few of them, like the representative sample or the random sample, the linear assumption. So that means the data has been linearly related. That is one assumption. Normality of the residuals is another thing that you can know. So this is pretty much the syllabus in a nutshell. When we go about the syllabus, we realize that calculator is one of the most important tools, and the formula sheet also happens to be one of the most important tools. So if I had to suggest a way out to prepare AP statistics, I would say that always start by narrowing down to a certain reference book. That reference book could be a Barron's, could be a Princeton, could be a McGraw-Hill. The core prep requires 18 to 20 hours. So if you're a student who can dedicate 4 to 5 hours a week, I believe that in a month you can be well aware of the concepts in general from the reference books. And then again, 1 or 2 months can be dedicated to practicing the concepts. Graphing calculator, like I said, again, is the most indispensable tool that we're going to use for AP statistics. A lot of students ask me which is the best graphing calculators. I would say that there's nothing as best graphing calculator when it comes to statistics. You take a Casio instrument, you take a TI-84, or you take a TI-Nspire. All these instruments are going to work just as well in AP statistics. So all of these three are very perfect when it comes to statistics. When it comes to calculus, of course, there could be a different opinion among students, but for statistics, any of these calculators is a perfect choice. There's no problem at all. The only thing is, I've realized students start late with the calculators. They think that calculator is just an optional thing. But when it comes to AP statistics, one must realize that there's nothing that you can do without a calculator in this exam. And that is precisely why the College Board allows you to have it in both the sections. So make sure that you know your calculator well, not just the concepts or not just getting the confidence intervals or the t-test, but also the debugging. So a lot of times I've seen students when they are calculating the descriptive statistics, the mean median mode, there are a few errors that the calculator sometimes show. For example, the dimension errors, and the students do not understand what a dimension error is. It is very important that you learn how to debug your calculators, because in case you're stuck somewhere in the exam, you need to figure out a way on your own, right? So make sure that you see what those errors are and you try to map them to an underlying cause. The next is attempt mock test. That is something which is very important when it comes to statistics, because statistics needs a lot of practice again on the concepts as well as the calculator. So in case you attempt more and more mock tests, you get used to those concepts, you get used to the calculators as well. Again, talking about free response questions, like I said, multiple choices are easier because, of course, there is one correct answer. If you know the concept well, you can always mark the correct answer for yourself. There is no negative marking. You can always eliminate the incorrect ones. But when it comes to free responses, the College Board is very specific about what it wants. So, for example, if it comes to scatter plot, it needs the direction, it needs the form of the pattern, it also needs the strength of the pattern. When it comes to a hypothesis test, it needs you to write the hypothesis used, it needs you to write the conditions used, it needs you to write the test statistic, the conclusion. So the idea is simple. When you're attempting the test, make sure that when you're done with the test, just go out and check the sample free responses that are available on the student website. That gives you a very good insight into what is required in a particular answer. So you would see the sample responses as well as the scoring guidelines, which help you in order to summarize what exactly is needed for a particular answer. The next is know your formula sheet and the tables well. Again, there are a lot of formulas that come into place somewhere in the last chapters. So starting from the inference, because we have sampling distributions coming in, we have confidence intervals coming in, we have tests coming in. So the student sometimes might get confused with the formula. So let's say if I use a p cap or whether I use a p naught. So I always tell my students that you should know exactly where on the formula sheet those formulas are, so that at least in case of a confusion, you can go back to the formula sheet and map them. So I would recommend that whenever you're preparing for AP statistic, at least 30 minutes should be dedicated to understanding the formula sheet and also the tables, the T table, the Z table, the the chi table. Of course, a lot of students don't use the T tables and the tables in general now, because of course the calculator takes into account all the functions of the tables. So that is one of the things, but the formula sheets is a very important thing that one must always go through. Answering techniques, like I said, there are a few relevant points that you need to answer. So always make sure that you read the sample responses. They give you a very good insight whether you have to label the variables that you're using, whether which conditions do you have to test, in what manner you have to test those conditions. All of those are very important details that you get on the college website. Sample free responses. So again, the student website on the college board has it all. When it comes to multiple choice, I would say that we get ample of resources for free responses, but we do not have ample of resources for multiple choices. So again, McGraw-Hill's, Badin's are a few resources that you can consider for multiple choice practice as well. So I think that summarizes everything. Can we take up a few questions, sure?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Thank you very much for this session. It was really helpful to know about AP statistics, how exactly it revolves around. The type of questions you conducted in this sessions were really good to have a good idea about the questions, how exactly the students should experience in the exam. So, thank you once again, ma'am. I would
Thank you
like
so
to
much.
moderate few questions for you, ma'am.
Sure.
So, can a CBSE student be able to give this exam?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to AP statistics, the prerequisites that this course offers are a general course on algebra and a general course on probability or statistics that you do in school. So for example, a statistics student in CBSE would have done the unit one, which was the descriptive statistics. So of course, after that, you can very well continue with the course here.
Okay. What are the best books to prepare for the AP statistics, and are there any free resources for the students?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to the free responses, firstly, the College Board has to offer a lot of material for the preparation. So they give you a like a course description that helps you analyze what are the sample questions. The second, as I said, the free responses are freely available. The multiple choices are also available, but those are not that huge in number. But certainly, a student can get insight. Talking about the books, like I said, Barron's, Princeton are good books to go ahead with.
Okay. Ma'am, what is the average number of days required or number of months required to prepare for this?
So, like I said, any student who puts in 4 to 5 hours on an average per week can finish the core prep. Core prep is like understanding the concepts firstly in a month or so, and then can prepare the mock tests and things in a given span of 1.5 months. So I think 2 to 3 months should be good enough to practice for AP statistics.
Okay, so basically 2 to 3 months. Ma'am, when did this change of date occur? Because some student has registered for 13th and it hasn't changed yet.
So I believe you'll be receiving the notification soon. So as we can see in the website, this date has been shifted from 13th to 17th because of some festival that falls on 13th of May. So you'll be hearing it soon from the college board.
Mhm. Okay. Ma'am, is Khan Academy enough for stats preparation?
So I believe any resource that you have, I believe that is going to be enough. The only thing is the main idea here is to practice. So make sure that whatever resource you're considering, you practice sample of mock tests.
Ma'am, which form of test would be preferable, the non-digital one or the digital one?
Honestly, in my opinion, the school test or the paper-based test is going to be much better. But of course, the digital test this time is not going to have too much of difference, unlike the last year. So one can go with the digital testing as well. No problem.
Okay. Uh, Where can we find enough mock papers? I guess sir has already answered. Even the ma'am would have the same opinion. When you buy the books, you would get free mocks from those particular books, the links. So you can get it there. And ma'am, last question: are the videos in the AP classroom by College Board enough for preparation?
Yes, so the videos there talk about specific questions. So of course you can use those videos, and plus you can have a reference book, like I said, so that
Okay.
helps you.
And lastly, ma'am, is there any difference in the weightage of digital and non-digital testing?
No, no, not at all. So basically, in the paper base, 50% and 50% was the weightage for section 1 and 2, and that is continued in the digital as well.
Okay. And I guess by that we have answered all the questions. Uh, a last question, ma'am. Do we get a, ZE table during exams?
Yes, absolutely. So in the test booklet, you would realize that the first few pages would be the formula sheets, and the last few pages would be the tables initially.
Okay. I guess we have answered all the questions, ma'am. Thank you for your whole session. I would like to also thank all the students for joining us. This was the last session for today. Please try to stay tuned for our next weekend. We'll be conducting 4 more sessions. Thank you, Swati ma'am, once again.